got this comment on a recent video asking, we need to sign a corner honestly. Who are the top cornerback free agents? And it kind of got the wheels turning of why don't we look at some of the top free agents remaining at the Falcons' biggest needs since training camp opens up 2 weeks from tomorrow. So we're going to look at Atlanta's biggest needs and the top free agents at those needs. But you guys know I love to be competitive. And with our week one opponent being the Steelers, Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Steelers Talk channel here at Chat Sports, we are trailing by a lot in likes so far in the month of July. The good news is it's a long month and we're very early in it. So go ahead, hit that thumbs up button if you have not already. Now, a quick primer for today's video. The 4 biggest needs, in my opinion, are edge rusher, cornerback, wide receiver, safety. They're also in a rough order, but you would not have to twist my arm to switch 1 or 2 of these up here. Now, we did just see a bit of a free agent, I'm going to call it splash, but move with the Houston Texans bringing back Jerry Hughes, and that might start getting the wheels moving for other teams going, all right, we can't drag our feet for too long because if our plan is to let the first or 2 weeks or so of training camp go by and look at our roster after that, well, the free agents that we might have on our short list could be signed with other teams. So this move right here, although Jerry Hughes is not going to send seismic waves across the ocean, it may trigger a couple of moves to follow suit. Now, let's look at some of the top edge rushers in the free agent market and their age as well. You've got Markus Golden, who was with the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, Emmanuel Ogbah, Shaq Lawson, Marquis Haynes, Carl Lawson, Yannick Ngakoue, Tyus Bowser, and Charles Harris. A couple of these names jump out to me. Yannick Ngakoue is probably the most proven of the bunch. He's had multiple 8+ sack seasons. He had an 8+ sack season in every single season of his NFL career up until last year when he only had 4 sacks in 13 games. He fractured his ankle, but he's been dropping highlight videos all offseason long showing that he has made a full recovery and he is ready to roll for this year. My take on Yannick Ngakoue, just sign the man for third downs. Like, don't ask him to stop the run because he's not good at it. But the Falcons have plenty of really good run stoppers. That's what you're paying David Onyemata for, right? That's what you're paying Grady Jarrett for. They have no shortage of run stoppers. They've got excellent linebackers. Can they just get a niche guy, right? It's a little bit like a basketball comparison, right? Can you get a guy that's just a sharpshooter 3-pointer? Like, sure, he may not play defense. He may not be the best rebounder, but if he can hit corner threes, I'll take it. If Yannick Ngakoue can generate pressures and come away with 5, 6, 7 sacks for this team because he's a third down rusher, I'll take it. The Falcons front 5, like I said, it is a young group. Zach Harrison entering year 2. Arnold Ebiketie entering year 3. And especially on the bench where you've got a bunch of rookies and a bunch of young players, like this is an overall young unit. And it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to add some veteran depth to it. Now, Yannick Ngakoue would serve more of a defensive end. If you want to bring on an extra outside linebacker, because you really only got 3, in my opinion, Ebiketie, Lorenzo Carter, and Braylon Trice, Markus Golden could be someone worth watching. Last year for the Steelers, he just came off the bench for them, 20 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and 4 sacks off the bench. Like, the Falcons' sack leader last year was at 6.5. 4 off the bench would do numbers for this team. PFF graded him very highly. Overall grade of 86.5. Run defense 77.8. Pass rush 80.9. He didn't play a ton of snaps. He didn't start a single game, but I don't need him to do that in Atlanta either. The reality is you're not going to find a pass rusher in free agency right now that's going to walk in the door and come out with 10 sacks this year. That's probably unlikely. But if you can get Markus Golden to give Lorenzo Carter, Braylon Trice, Arnold Ebiketie a breather, or God forbid one of them gets injured and you don't want to turn to someone no one's ever heard of on the bench, Markus Golden is an excellent option. I mean, he's had some really good years in his NFL career as well. 12.5 sacks, 10 sacks, 11 sacks. He tends to space them out a little bit, so you could argue he's due for a big 10+ sack season, but that's not really what I'm searching for out of Golden. I'm looking for a guy that can provide some excellent depth and just be a veteran presence in this locker room for a really young defense in a lot of ways. Like I said, depth is just a concern for me across the board. If you don't have a good plan B in the NFL, you're kind of destined to fail. Sure, you can hope that all 22 starters stay healthy, and if that's the case, the Falcons are going to be a really competitive team, not just in the regular season, but I think in the playoffs. But if an injury or two starts popping up, which in the NFL, you got to kind of account for some level of injuries, then I have concerns for this Falcons pass rush because it's already shaky at the top. You look under the hood, and it's really shaky. Bring in Markus Golden, bring in Yannick Ngakoue, just bring in some depth overall at the pass rushing unit. Now, we're going to look at cornerbacks next, but who do you think, or what do you think is the biggest need for the Falcons? Edge rusher or corner? They kind of work hand in hand. If the pass rush can generate a lot of pressure, then the cornerbacks don't need to stay in coverage as long. If the pass rush does not generate a ton of pressure, the cornerbacks have to stay in coverage for longer. So you can kind of go with one or the other, but let me know what you think in the comment section. Okay, let's talk about the top free agent cornerbacks available. You've got some good starters, like Stephon Gilmore is a starter still in this league. I think Xavien Howard is a starter still in this league. Patrick Peterson's probably not a starter, but he's someone that if he has to start because of an injury, you're not going to lose sleep over it. K'Waun Williams is a really solid nickel corner. Fabian Moreau is a solid veteran backup that, if needed, can play and play good snaps for you. J.C. Jackson is awful. Adoree Jackson is washed. And Eli Apple is just there for shit-talking purposes. I'm on board with Clark Phillips starting opposite of A.J. Terrell. But the same spiel I gave for the edge rusher depth, it kind of has to apply to the Falcons' depth at that spot. So, when you look at the Atlanta Falcons cornerback room, you've got some veteran additions from the offseason. Antonio Hamilton, Kevin King, Dane Cruikshank, Harrison Hand, but no draft picks. And a lot of the additions, I think, were made with an outside corner in mind. I like D. Alford, and I'm confident in him starting at nickel, but I'm not sold that he can start every single game. Like, you just can't assume everyone's going to be healthy. And so if you need a quality backup to step in for a few weeks, I think K'Waun Williams is your best bet for a nickel corner at this point in free agency. 2 years ago for the Broncos, after missing all of 2023 due to an ankle injury, he had 44 tackles, 1 pick, 7 pass breakups. He gave up 319 yards in coverage, no touchdowns, and Pro Football Focus ranked him 53rd out of 135 qualifying cornerbacks. Again, you're not going to find a new starting corner or a new starting pass rusher in free agency at this point. But you can find some really good veteran backups that if an injury pops up, you can feel confident about them stepping in. Or if some of these younger guys like Clark Phillips or like Zach Harrison are struggling early on in the season, you're not standing in your own grave going, well, there's no one behind them that's any better. So we made our bed and now we got to sleep in it. How about you go get some insurance runs? All right, before we move on to the next group of free agents, if you want to get a shout out on a future episode of Falcons Today, go ahead and subscribe. Demetrius Bevins, Andre Frazier, Tim Reyes, Nick Bellato, Horace Rajan. Thank you guys so much for subscribing. I'm sorry if I probably butchered your first or last name, but I do appreciate everyone who hits the sub button down below. So make sure you do so you can get a shout out on a future episode. Also, we have a great deal going on with our friends over at Fanatics. You can get this Falcons t-shirt and hat combo 45% off. I'm not joking. Chatsports.com/ATL combo. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. But if you want to up your Falcons wardrobe and get 2 pieces for 45% off, use our exclusive link, chatsports.com/ATL combo. Let's switch gears and talk about the wide receivers now. I think this wide receiver unit is going to be leaned on a lot more in 2024 than it was in 2023 and 2022 and 2021. It's also a very different makeup of a wide receiver unit. Like last year you had Drake London and Matt Collins, Van Jefferson. Those were all 6 foot plus, 200 pound plus players. Look at the wide receiver makeup for this year. Like you get Drake London back, which by the way, I keep forgetting how freaky young he is, just 22 years old. Darnell Mooney though, 5'11", 173 pounds. Rondale Moore, 5'7", 180 pounds. They added a ton of speed, and that's not a bad thing to do. But I do think in the wide receiver department, you should diversify your portfolio. You shouldn't just have a bunch of speedster. And while Drake London is your big body target, I think it's worth adding another bigger frame in the wide receiver room. So when you look at the top free agent wide receivers in a moment, I think what we're going to try and target here are some of the bigger guys altogether. So we've got players like Randall Cobb, Marquis Goodwin, Michael Thomas, Jakeem Grant, Jamal Agnew, Hunter Renfrow, familiar name and face in Russell Gage, Richie James. You've got some speedsters, Marquis Goodwin, Jakeem Grant, those guys are track stars. Hunter Renfrow is a really fast and solid, well, solid's probably when he was at his heyday, but he's a slot receiver. That's what I'm trying to say. I was trying to be nice. Say something nice. I'm sorry. Michael Thomas is definitely the most notable name of the bunch. The last 4 years for Slant Boy have not been nice. Like, he missed one game in the first 4 years of his NFL career. The next 4 years of his NFL career, I think the number is like 38. It's kind of sad, if we're being honest, just the inability to stay on the field and stay healthy. So I'm not too keen on adding Michael Thomas because you're just adding someone who's going to be unreliable and largely unavailable for you. One name I do like is Russell Gage. Now, he did miss all of last year, torn ACL in the preseason. But before that, you can see the last 3 years he had in Atlanta and his first of 2 seasons in Tampa Bay. The guy put up back-to-back 700-plus yard seasons in an offense that was very pass-happy with Matt Ryan. And I think with Kirk Cousins, it's going to be a very pass-happy offense. So if I had to pick one wide receiver, it would be Russell Gage. He's 6 foot. He's got good size to him. He'd complement the rest of the wide receiver room, kind of balance things out a little bit from your smaller, speedier guys to some of your big body targets you can kind of just chuck it up to, so to speak. So I think Russell Gage would fit the mold quite well for what the Falcons wide receiver room is lacking just a little bit of. So I'll turn it over to you, give you guys the mic. Should the Falcons bring back Russell Gage? Give me a Y for yes or give me an N for no. I'm on board with re-signing Russell Gage. You're finding a guy in July who had back-to-back 700-plus yard seasons not too many years ago. It's hard to find much better content or production than that at this stage in free agency. Now, speaking of Falcons wide receivers, our trivia question for today. 4 wide receivers for Atlanta have had an 8-plus touchdown season since 2000. Name all 4. I know that's kind of daunting and taxing, but I think you'll find that 2 will come to your mind immediately. The third will take an extra second, but the fourth one is a little bit tougher. So, name the 4 wide receivers since 2000 who have had 8 or more touchdowns in a single season for Atlanta. Finally, we land at the safety department. Jesse Bates is an all-pro. He's the only Falcon to ever have 100-plus tackles and 6 interceptions in the same season. So we have no worries about Jesse Bates. Then you got DeMarco Hellams and Richie Grant, and they are kind of the next 2 candidates competing for that second starting safety position. If for whatever reason the Falcons decide we don't like either option, here are some of the top safety free agents remaining. I think the safety room is probably the most loaded room in free agency. Like Justin Simmons is an all-pro caliber player in my opinion. He's still on the market. Quandre Diggs, Eddie Jackson, Jamal Adams, Keanu Neal, Micah Hyde. Like, there are some really established and proven players on the open market right now in the safety room. So it's not the worst time in the world to need a safety. The one that jumps out to me as maybe the most likely candidate, it's Eddie Jackson. He's got the connection to Ryan Pace, who was the Bears GM before coming over to work in the Falcons front office, and we know that there's been a bit of a pipeline from Chicago to Atlanta for former Ryan Pace players. Eddie Jackson, the last couple of years, has unfortunately been injured at times and just a bit underwhelming compared to the way he started his career off, right? You look at Eddie Jackson's first few years in Chicago, the guy was a touchdown machine. Like, he had 3 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 4 forced fumbles. And then you look at the last 4 years in Chicago, and it's just a dip across the board. Unfortunately, injuries have played a major factor in that. But I could see the Falcons going, we like what we have in DeMarco Hellams. We're more confident in Richie Grant than the last regime was. But it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to add a veteran safety who wouldn't cost us a lot and would provide some nice depth in case an injury pops up or Hellams or Grant struggle early on in the season. Now, for all the names we ran through today, which player do you want to sign the most? Let me know down below in the comment section. I'd probably go like pound for pound. I think Russell Gage would be a really solid signing. Like wide receiver may not be their biggest need, but there's not many great edge rushers left. Maybe I'll go with Yannick Ngakoue. I feel like that'd be a really fun signing just for the pass rushing woes they are potentially facing, not having a bunch of experienced guys at that spot. But let me know which name you want to sign the most down below. All right, we'll wrap up the video by looking at the answer of our Falcons trivia question. 4 wide receivers for Atlanta have had an 8+ touchdown season since 2000. Name all 4. I said 2 would be really easy to get. The third would take you an extra second. But the fourth one, that's the one that you might have to think an extra minute on. The answers are Roddy White, Julio Jones. I expect everyone to get that immediately. Calvin Ridley. And then you got to go back to 2006. Algie Crumpler had 8 touchdowns. Kind of a forgotten-ish Falcon. Maybe not. Maybe that's just my age showing a little bit here. But 4 Falcons with 8 or more touchdowns in a single season since 2000.